Bonjour, welcome everybody. I'd like to share a little perspective about the use of gendered pronouns in the Ojibwe language. My daughter, Madeline, and myself have been bringing an Ojibwe word of the day to you for a few years now. There's an issue that keeps popping up. It's an issue with the English language rather than with Ojibwe around gendered pronouns. In Ojibwe, it's actually a great relief. When we don't have to worry about English translation, a word like wisini means he eats. It also means she eats, and it does not distinguish between a gender binary or anywhere else on the gender spectrum. It works really well because it does not distinguish. Everybody fits in for we sini. That applies to any single human being. The issue comes up when we try to write it down in English because English, like Spanish, French, a lot of other European languages, does have gendered pronouns. And so it ends up being an issue because not all human beings fit into a nice, neat gender binary. We've been puzzling on this and talking to other people in the Ojibwe language revitalization universe, and I'll share a little more detail just to give you a sense for the complexity of translating into English. And these are some of the standard social uses of English that often get pulled up when we're working on translation. All of them are clunky and all of them have problems. So one would just be to use he or she eats. And by the way, this is the system that has most widely been used for dictionaries, including the Ojibwe People's Dictionary, which is kind of our premier dictionary for the Ojibwe language. It's also what has been used in the Concise Dictionary of Minnesota Ojibwe, and other ones as well. What's clunky about the first one is that not everybody is a she and not everybody is a he, and some people prefer to keep that indistinct. It's not entirely respectful, and this is an issue with English. Again, if didn't have to translate this word, wisini works perfectly. The next option is one that is pretty commonly used, is to say, all right, let's call it they or they singular. That works when we're speaking to one another socially. However, it does tend to confuse people, and we are trying to do an Ojibwe word of the day, which has a limited number of characters and space, and we have a lot of beginner learners of the Ojibwe language. For some of the folks, when you say they singular, they will start commenting, but they means more than one. I don't get it. And although socially, once we've established a context, I think people do get that and can roll with it pretty well. If we post an Ojibwe word of the day this way, and we've tried it, then what happens is we get a lot of comments saying, I'm confused. I thought they meant more than one, even though it says they dash singular. And we end up spending a lot of time answering questions about the English translation. It seems like putting they dash singular ends up confusing people. Another one is just to skip the singular part and just say they eat. But if you do that and you don't distinguish they singular as opposed to they plural, in Ojibwe you'd have to add something to the word. We sini wug to mean more than one person are eating, whereas we sini just means that one person alone is eating. So some of the other things that have been tried would be to say, how about saying one eats? That sounds like that would solve the problem, but Ojibwe is so specific, you'd really need the other word, Bajik, for a numeral to clarify one, as opposed to in English, you can use one to mean one of us, or something like that, as opposed to numeral one. But in Ojibwe, it wouldn't align with the translation, and people would be saying, which part of this word, Wisini, means one? And again, we're in the comments trying to clarify something clunky with the English. Another one of the ones that sometimes comes up, people say, how about just like one who eats? Although technically that's a participle form, it's a noun-like verb, and you end up having to conjugate the Ojibwe again. So if you're just trying to develop an English translation of we sini, it again doesn't align. You could use someone eats. No gender distinction. Sounds more respectful in English. However, in Ojibwe, you need to add the word awia to denote someone. If you didn't put it there, but you translated it as someone, you would end up confusing people. And again, there would be comments. I thought the word awia meant someone. Where's the someone part in we sini? And again, we're in the comments having to do a lot of explaining. Another option we puzzled around was how about just put all of them there and let people pick the one that speaks to them the best. Put he, she, they dash singular, someone, one eats. That certainly would provide the English language clarity without forcing somebody to eat one of these labels, pronouns that they don't like. However, that takes up a lot of character spaces, and we're also trying to share one simple Ojibwe word a day with one line that goes in a header. It ends up taking up a lot of real estate in a video. So as you can see, like all of these kind of standard English options have some complication or issue. Here are some of the other things that we have thought about and considered. So there are some more linguistic ways to lay this out. You might remember from ninth grade English class, they say first person is me, second person is you, third person is him or her. And although that does establish a little hierarchy and it's a Western way of looking at things, and a lot of Ojibwe words start as a base in the third, what we call in English the third person, we could look past all of that and the structuring, English language structuring for this way of laying it out. But you could use the linguistic terms and say third person singular of eat. That would be accurate. Although it's amazing. We have a lot of people engaged with Ojibwe word of the day, and some don't actually know first, second, third person in English. Don't know what those associations mean. So again, we get a whole bunch of comments like, what does third person mean? I don't understand. I'm confused. Can't you just say this in a way that makes sense? And we'd be doing more explaining in the comments. You could use a shorter form of it too, which is 3P. They actually do this in some of the dictionaries and things like that. It stands for third person. And then they would have a different way to denote the plurals and things like that. And that does provide a little more succinctness and clarity. But if you're not working on Ojibwe linguistics, a lot of people, especially since they're learning their first Ojibwe words through this process, need a lot of explanation or context for that. And by the way, like we could write a couple paragraphs to explain whatever our choice is, but we're posting these things to social media and most people do not read 2 paragraphs of an explanation to something. So here's some other options that have come up. It's let's take some English out of the English translation. In Ojibwe, the word wean does denote third person. So that is the they singular, the one or someone, the he and she. It works for all of them. That's just the standard pronoun, not part of the verb itself. So you could say wean eats. And you don't have to worry. It just simplifies everything. The only issue with that one is that we are teaching a lot of people their first few Ojibwe words, and they don't know what wean means. So we could add that to the videos, but it gets longer, and we can add it to the text description below, and a lot of people won't read it, and we'll end up doing a lot of explaining in the comments because we're confusing people. In Ojibwe, it's a nice distinguished difference. Ween is the singular, third person. Ween-awa means more than one person, so you can distinguish between one or more than one. They are gender indescript because Ojibwe does not have the problems that English and some of the other European languages do. That's the dilemma. So as we've been thinking about this dilemma and really it's at our heart to be kind to everyone, to be inclusive of everyone, not to make somebody pick some gender label that does not align for them, and not to reinforce those concepts in our teaching. We actually have initiated some conversations with other people who are in positions of academic authority and are working on a lot of the dictionaries and things like that. And we want to expand the conversation to see if there's a different or better way to lay this out. No one's come up with a perfect solution. Really, for the time being, while that conversation continues, we will continue to have a conversation with linguists and Ojibwe culture carriers and language speakers. And there are all kinds of opinions out there on all sides of it. And they're all really welcome. So as we continue to poke and prod and think about that, in the meantime, we're still sharing a word a day, and we have to pick one of these things to keep sharing information with you. For now, we have been using the standard version that has been used in the dictionaries and things like that, which is the he/she, but we are open to your thoughts, your comments. We are engaging in a broader conversation so we can do better at the English. But as you learn Ojibwe and start using Ojibwe more, we can actually leave the English behind. And in the Ojibwe language, we have gender inclusivity and no pronoun problems. Thanks a lot for listening and watching today. Miigwech.